Hi. I think we all need like a breath. So I'm Nic Stone. I'm not going to stand behind this podium because my outfit is too cute. And I am the sole fiction writer here this morning, afternoon, whatever time it is. So I'm going to tell you a story. When I was 27, this is June 27th, 2012, I gave birth to a whole-ass child. My little boy's name is Kieran, and he was perfect. Now, I know some of you here have gone through this process of, creating a new person, but for those of you who haven't, let's just go over it real quick. First, there's a good time with another person who has, the chromosomes that help the chromosomes make a new person. And then there is 9.5-ish months of living with a genuine biological parasite growing inside of your body. All of us in this room were biological parasites in the womb of a person who had a womb at some point. I think this is the great equalizer. But after that 9 months of this creature inside of you kind of sucking the life out of your body and eating the calcium from your bones. This is all scientific, y'all. I'm not playing. This is some real stuff. Anybody who has been pregnant before knows exactly what I'm talking about. You got to get the thing out, is the thing, right? After you have done all of this work to create this new human, you have to get the human out into the world. And I was lucky to have a human who was really ready to come. So 4.5 hours of labor, I have this person. And they put the person on my chest, and it was a spitting image of his father. And I'm like, a little offended. And he was also very pale, my child. And the first words out of my mouth when I saw this new person was, "Whose little white baby is this?" The umbilical cord is still attached, mind you, so clearly this is my child that I had. But he didn't look like I was expecting him to, and I was a little bit nervous about it. But we bonded very quickly. 5 months after my son was born, I heard about an incident. I was living in Jerusalem, Israel, by the way, so my son was born abroad. And I hear about this incident in Jacksonville, Florida. A young man named Jordan Davis goes to a convenience store with some friends one night. He is 17 years old. He and his friends are riding in this red Dodge Durango, got the music turned up real loud, just like my 34-year-old ass listens to my music still. I am successful and intelligent and educated and very, very ratchet. And I think that it's important that we recognize that those things are not mutually exclusive. So I hear about this young man who is at this convenience store with his friends with their music cranked up. And another patron pulls into the parking lot of the convenience store next to the car that they're in. He's bothered, this man, by the volume of the music they are listening to and the type of music they are listening to. Clearly, this man has no tastes in music. And so bothered, in fact, was this older man that he starts an argument with these kids, and within 3.5 minutes, he had pulled out a firearm and started shooting. And 17-year-old Jordan Davis was killed in this incident over loud music. So I hear about this thing, and I look at my then 5-month-old, and I'm like, damn. One day, this kid is going to look like that kid. He is going to be tall. My father is, I'm 5'8", right, which is moderately tall for a person with 2 X chromosomes. My father is 6'5", we just were very big people in my family. And I know that my sons are going to be big, My older son he's lighter skinned, but he is a black man. He will be a black man someday, a black boy who looks like a black man and will likely be mistaken for a black man. And thinking about the fact that this boy had lost his life over music, and I have this boy who will eventually look like this boy who lost his life over this loud music. To say that it shook me is like the understatement of understatements. And I just thought to myself, how? Why? What are these things in place that would make a grown man decide to start a fight with a group of teenagers because he doesn't like their music, and then shoot one of them? So let's fast forward a little bit. 2014, at this point, my son is, he's almost 2. And I am finishing up my final semester at Spelman College. Oop, oop. And because I dropped out of college twice, by the way. It's fine, it worked out. So I'm at Spelman finishing up, and I'd started writing a book. I was like, after I had the child, I decided that I wanted to try and write a book because I'd read all of these books. There were never books with me in them, right? And it made me think about, I read this one book series called Divergent. Who's heard of it? Yes, Veronica Roth, #Bae, because she wrote, literally, the first ever highly commercial, successful book series where a black character lives all the way through the end. So I read this book series, and I am just enamored with the idea of a black character surviving an apocalypse. So I was like, well, dang, if she can do that, I can write one with a black girl at the center. So I'm doing all this, 2014, finishing this final semester of college, and there's another incident. This one involves a young man named Michael Brown, Ferguson, Missouri. And this one involved a police officer. To say that I was shook again, understatement, even bigger than the other one, because I spent the first 22 years of my life with a police officer in my house. My father was a retired police officer. So hearing about this incident threw me back to the first one, and I'm like, oh boy, okay, this is really something. Interestingly enough, thankfully, I was not the only person who felt that way. And in response to this incident in Ferguson, Missouri, a movement kicked off. Black Lives Matter was the phrase at the core of this movement. And that phrase actually started as a hashtag. That hashtag was born after the acquittal of a man named George Zimmerman, who killed a young man named Trayvon Martin in early 2012. And when Michael Brown was killed, that hashtag became a whole thing. Protests and marches began taking place all over the country, and when I tell y'all, I was ecstatic about seeing the way that people rallied together in support of this young man who had lost his life unjustly, and also rallied together in support of some things maybe starting to change. It made me so happy. But then I began to notice that there were a lot of public figures. Bill O'Reilly was one, I know Mike Huckabee was one, who looked at the movement, looked at what was happening, and they were made to be very uncomfortable. And I kept hearing these people say things like, Dr. King would never support a movement like this. Dr. King would be appalled. When the mayor of Atlanta, which is my city, got on television ahead of an anti-racism march in Atlanta and said, all I ask is that you don't take the freeways, Dr. King would never take a freeway. Who the hell Dr. King are you talking about, sir? Because the one I'm aware of took a whole lot of freeways. This is when Dear Martin was born. The idea for Dear Martin came from a combination of what happened to Jordan Davis in 2012 and the response to the movement after what happened to Michael Brown in 2014. It involves a 17-year-old African-American boy who, after a traumatic experience with racial profiling, he is profiled by a police officer while trying to assist his ex-girlfriend, helping her get home after she has had too much to drink at a party. In the process of trying to put her into her own car, a cop pulls up, the young man is instantly arrested, not permitted to speak. And in response to this incident, This young man starts a journal of letters that he writes to the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., really to see how Dr. King's teachings hold up now. Because what I've discovered is that anytime something goes wrong and my people decide to make a stand about it, there's this slew of vitriol is one piece of it. But there's also this response that always makes it the victim's fault. And this is something that I can no longer abide, that I could no longer abide. So I want somebody to open Dear Martin to page 152. Got it? Spoiler alert. This is the whole point of the book. Like, I'm not telling you what happens, but like, if you need like your theme and your symbols, all of this is right here in these first two sentences. You can't change how people think and act, but you're in full control of you. When it comes down to it, the only question that matters is this: if nothing in the world ever changes, what kind of man are you going to be? That is the crux of this book. That is the crux of my message. And I just hope y'all are into it. And I got 55 seconds left, so I did good.